Oh, good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Anthony.
How smart are you feeling today?
So smart, Anthony. Why?
That's
Why
a problem because our guest today is going to tell you why your IQ is your biggest bottleneck. Thankfully, I don't have that problem.
I don't know that anybody's really gonna, accuse us of having the highest IQ. I don't know that really they're gonna come in and be like, "Hey,
nobody has ever said to me, Anthony, you're too smart for your own good." Nobody's ever said that to me.
It's never happened once in my life. Not one time. You know what? You're just a little too smart, Chris. Sorry, Anthony, I want to tell you my dad joke, but I'll probably wait till the end. All right. So, okay. Anthony, why do 70% of high IQ founders struggle to scale past 10 million in revenue? In 1995, psychologist Daniel Goleman discovered that emotional intelligence accounts for 58% of performance in all job types. 58% of performance in all job types. But for leaders, that number jumps to 90%. Meanwhile, Reed Hastings, Netflix co-founder, once fired his entire original executive team, not because they lacked technical skills, because they couldn't handle the emotional complexity of rapidly scaling. As Hastings later admitted, the hardest part of building Netflix wasn't the technology. It was learning that being right isn't the same thing as being effective. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about developing emotional intelligence. I'm Chris Franks. With me is the highly emotionally intelligent Mr. Anthony Franco, because you have glasses. I mean, your EQ just goes up a little bit when you put glasses on. I think that's universal truth.
You hurt my feeling, Chris.
You're one? You have one feeling?
Yeah, I just have one feeling.
That's just, but it's a very strong feeling. Luckily, we're going to be guided today by somebody who is very smart, Mr. Lee Povey. Lee, unbelievable founder. He transforms technically brilliant founders into emotionally intelligent leaders who can actually scale. With 2 decades coaching everyone from Olympic athletes to billion-dollar entrepreneurs, he's discovered why IQ gets you in the game, but EQ wins it. Mr. Lee Povey, welcome. You do have a high EQ because you're British. I think it's required, right? Is that just part of the deal?
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. If only that was true, then the UK would still be the world superpower, wouldn't we? So something went wrong somewhere.
That's a very valid point. That's a very valid point. So let's just talk about this. First of all, help us define what is this thing we call EQ. It's so critically important. All the research now points to the fact that EQ being twice as important in any job role as IQ. But let's try to define it first. How would you define this thing called EQ?
So unfortunately, Chris, I have often been accused of being too smart for my own good. So from that lens,
that's why we brought you on. You're bringing the IQ up.
I've had to learn how to develop EQ because I thought it was all about processing power, right? So that's intelligence. How big is the processing power you have in your brain? And then EQ is what can you do with that processing power? How can you relate to other people? How can you create community? How can you create shared vision? How can you motivate other people? How can you create communities that thrive rather than, and this is where your scaling comment comes in, these brilliant founders that think they have to do it all by themselves. And that's where the problem comes in. So my zone of genius is working with founders, typically very smart people who get to that point where their company's got 20 to 50 people and they're stuck. And the reason they're stuck is because beyond that number, you have to be able to let go and empower other people. And this is where being too smart gets in your own way, because if you can do everything better than anyone else can, it can be quite difficult to let go and to go, right, how do I empower you to do it? And how do I stand back while you learn, while you fail, while you make mistakes? So the EQ part of it is knowing that I will be okay if other people make mistakes. I'm okay helping other people.
Anthony, even just that is such a wild thought process for most founders. For the list of years,
Yeah, none of it resonated with me. I am viscerally allergic to what Lee just said.
your one feeling has just now been completely trampled on. Stop warning for Anthony. It's tough. He's struggling. Anthony, I do think that conventional wisdom for years was, why would I need to be a people person? I just need to be a genius. And if you think about kind of even some of the most iconic founders and CEOs of our generation, of Jobs and of Musk, and like, oh, they're just technical geniuses. They don't have good EQ. I think that it's probably not true. I think that they probably do, but that's that narrative that we hear, isn't it, Anthony?
I think Jobs and Musk actually, it's funny, I was thinking about those two individuals as we were talking. I think they have profound EQ. That doesn't mean, so having EQ, I think, so Lee, I'd love you to, I'd love you to tell me where I'm wrong here, but I always thought of EQ as having deep empathy for your employees, your customers, your users, just having this deep empathy and being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand how they're feeling about a situation. And if you look at the products that those two founders have innovated on and have led the charge on, they have deep empathy for their customers and what their customers need. Maybe it's because they're the customer and that's how they get the empathy, but I always thought that you can't build great products unless you have really high EQ. Do you agree with that, Lee?
I think you can have some people that are insanely driven and get the right people around them. So I think often when we look at founders, and this is part of the problem, what we do is we believe the founder's doing everything. We believe that Elon's a rocket scientist because he makes rockets or his companies make rockets. But typically the founder isn't. It's other people that are doing that stuff. And it's the founder's job to hold those people together. The myth of the self-made man. There is no self-made person. There is nobody that's done it by themselves. We have to have teams. We have to have support. We have to have luck. Like where you're born makes a difference. The school that you go to makes a difference. Your parents, do they have money? Do they encourage you to be innovative? So I think it's very hard without actually intimately knowing these people, whether they do or not. I've heard certainly some quotes from Steve Jobs and seen some of the stuff that he's written where I think that guy really understood what people want. And I think his genius was seeing where is the world going to go and being a few steps ahead of, right, what products do we need to make? He would also see products that other companies were doing, understand why that product was failing, what they'd missed, and be able to improve it. Because if you think of the iPhone, there was a thing called a Palm Pilot before that. But it didn't work very well, whereas the iPhone immediately worked well, was very intuitive. So he knew when to step into market segments and when not to. And he really richly understood the human experience with these products that would make people really want to use them. And he also knew that they had to be beautiful. People had to want and desire them. If you look at what Apple does, their ability to make desirable products. Other companies can make products as good as Apple now. It's not like they completely own the product section, but their interface is easier to use than anybody else's. And their products just look so nice. And even from unboxing, you unbox an Apple product, the whole unboxing process is part of the journey. So I think when we look at these founders, it's hard unless we're really with them. It's hard to know whether they're great at getting the right people around them or whether they're doing this themselves and they have that high level of empathy, or whether they're just great at picking people. Some founders are geniuses at picking the right people and then getting out of their way. That itself is a skill. Who should be running my departments, and then get out of the way and let them do it.
I think that you just hit on a really important point, because this is one thing that we know to be true, which is EQ is a skill. IQ is fixed, but EQ is not. It's something we can work on and develop. And so as we talk about for the rest of the conversation, I want to get into how we do that and what are some tools and techniques. But first, I think it's important that we say, it can be developed. And it really, I think it just starts with a mindset, Lee, right? Like how do I as a founder start to attack this journey of saying, I want to build up my EQ skills?
You said it on the intro, and it's something that was a learning process for me, which is, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And when I was younger, if somebody said to me, do you want to be right or do you want to be kind? And that's the kind of thing my wife would say to me. He was a very loving psychotherapist. Like, do you want to be right or do you want to be kind? I'm like, I want to be right. That's it.
That's absolutely
I want to be right.
Duh.
And I was working with a coach myself, and she reframed it to me, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And that's what really got me to buy into is I want to be effective. And therefore, right, okay, I want an outcome. How do I get to the outcome? I have to be able to connect and get on with other people to get an outcome, because you cannot do it by yourself. As I said about the self-made thing, there is no such thing. We have to do things with other human beings, even if it's negotiate contracts with a supplier. So having the ability to understand that other human beings is incredibly important if you really want to be truly successful. And that starts with, and this is where most people get confused, is that starts with ourselves. You cannot understand others if you cannot understand yourself, because you've got to understand, why do I react the way that I do? Why is my emotional response in a particular way? What are the things that hook me in? What is it that I have to be aware of when I'm in relationship with others? And I want to take a quick step back. I'm going to challenge something you said, Chris. Intelligence is trainable. So yes, we're born with a certain cognitive ability, but you can train that. That's a skill too. And
So
it's the
you're
same
saying
with
there's a
emotional
chance.
intelligence. There is a chance. There is a chance. I could
I
give you some exercises that will help.
Wow, I'm so excited.
But
all those things my wife has told me for years. That's true.
I mean, it's all trainable, and it's the same with emotional intelligence. Some people are born with a higher level of natural empathy. That doesn't mean the rest of us, idiots like me, who thought they were empathy deficient, can't learn it, because you can learn it. And the way I look at it is, we're all born with certain genetic personality traits. Anyone who's a parent knows this, because you look at your kids, come from the same genetic matter, have a similar upbringing, and can be completely different. So there is a genetic component to our personality. Then it's, you meet the world meets you, you adapt yourself. Your parents want you to be a certain way, the world wants you to be a certain way, depending on your gender, where you live, the upbringing you had, and you adapt yourself. Then we get into adulthood, and those adaptations may not serve us anymore. The thing that got us through our childhood now might be the Achilles heel. And this is often what I see with founders. The thing that got us through our childhood now gets in the way. And this is why, I mean, you've got to start with yourself first. You have to unpack that and go, how is this protective mechanism that got me through my childhood now in the way as an adult? How is it stopping me being connected? How is it stopping me let go? You know, if I think of myself, I had a narcissistic, sociopathic father. And I don't say that lightly. He would be clinically diagnosed as such, only capable of caring for himself or looking after himself and his own needs. So what did that make little Lee? It made me unbelievably independent. So it meant that I was very good at taking control of myself, and control for me was safety. So to be safe from him, I was smarter than him, and I would control everything with my intelligence. Now extrapolate that out to being an adult. Other adults don't like being controlled. So my ability to be smarter than you, outthink you, control you, now you as an adult feel manipulated. You don't like that. That doesn't create connection between us. If anything, actually it does the opposite, and it creates a disconnection. So I've had to learn the hard way. So this is what I mean about trainability of emotional intelligence. I've really had to learn that because I was ineffective. I was not good at making those connections as a young man. So I've had to learn how to do that.
It's funny because if you ask a founder to define their company, in a lot of cases, they're going to talk about their product. They're going to talk about their processes. They're going to talk about a lot of other things, but every company is just a collection of human beings, and they bring with them every bit of messiness that every human brings to the table. And to me, what you're saying, Lee, is I, as a founder and as a leader and as a CEO, I just need to get good at working with human beings. Does that resonate?
Get good at working with human beings and be great at regulating your own emotions. So for Anthony's one emotion, I'm going to try and help him out here and see if we can give him a couple more. So if you guys are okay with it,
hold on. Oh my God! Look at him. His head's starting to. He's vibrating.
It's okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Keep the breathing deep. We're going to be okay. Stay with me. If it's okay with you guys, I'd love to do a little bit of teaching about the emotion models that I use with founders and how I see the world to break it down.
Great.
So I think one of my gifts is I like to make things simple for myself and for other people because I want to be effective. You know, I see smart people, psychologists come onto podcasts and they make it seem incredibly complex. And I want the opposite. I want the easiest toolkit possible. So I work with 6 emotions: fear, joy, anger, sadness, interest, and disgust. The first 4 are the predominant emotions that we work with. So you've got
fear, joy, anger, sadness,
interest, and disgust. And these emotions are, what's the best way to describe these emotions are guide maps and data to our daily experience. So anything happens, any kind of trigger situation happens, and we have 4 responses to it as a human being. That's the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn system. So somebody sends you a text and that text says, we need to talk. Typically, you're going to get activated, and that activation is going to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So fight, right, I'm ready. Whatever it is they want to have a go at me about, I'm ready for you. Flight, right, I'm going to ignore that text and run away. Freeze, so flight would be I'm just going to disappear. Freeze would be I'm going to ignore it. And then fawn would be how can I placate that person? And this comes from our genetic heritage. You know, when we were first being developed and we might come to a life or death situation, we had to decide, were we going to fight that thing? Were we going to run away from it? Were we going to play dead? Or were we going to feed it, hoping that it then would not eat us? So that was our 4 choices. And the human psyche hasn't evolved beyond that, which is why people are struggling so much in this technological age and social media age, because we're seeing tweets and DMs just as stressful to us as walking into the plane and seeing a lion. And that's how our brain works. So that's why we have to now teach ourselves we're not in that life-threatening situation. So if something happens, we have this response, and then there's an emotion that goes with that response. So say we get that text, we need to talk, you might feel anger. Like, what does this person want? Fuck them. Right, I'm angry, I'm ready to fight. We might feel fear. Oh no, what did I say? How did I upset them? And there's an emotion that goes with it. And the most skilled people I see, they're able to stop, locate how they're feeling, understand what that emotion is telling them. So anger is usually saying to me, right, there's some kind of boundary that's being crossed, or there's a conflict that I'm having with somebody. Fear usually says, I'm not prepared for something. There's something I'm afraid of because I'm not prepared, so I'm scared. And once we understand what we're feeling, then we can locate ourselves, and then we can move to conscious choice. So I like to think of our brain as 3 parts. So the first part is the emotive, childlike part of our brain. This is that reactive, feeling, fight, flight, freeze, fawn system. Then we have the cognitive part of our brain, which is where we want to get to. And the emotive part of our brain works much, much quicker than the cognitive part. This is why we have these quick reactions to things, right? That part of our brain is life or death, bang, it's super strong and super fast. And then we have to slow down, go, what is it I'm feeling? What does that feeling tell me? Now, what's the choice I'd like to make? So we go back to our text example. The choice I'd like to make is just to be curious. I have no idea what that other person wants. History tells me that typically when somebody texts me and says, we need to speak, it's about them and has nothing to do with me, and they probably just want some advice or to vent or some support. So if I can quieten that insecure part of my brain that says I've done something wrong or they're about to tell me off, and go instead, oh, I wonder what this person wants to talk about. I regulate myself and I enter that conversation completely calm, and I'm not ready to have a fight with them. I'm not ready to run away with them. I'm just curious. And the last part of our brain is what I call the computer. And that part of our brain is our stored reactions. So if I give you another demonstration, we're driving down the road, somebody cuts us off, and we flip them the bird. It's immediate, it's instinctual, or we swear at them, whatever we do, that's our normal response. What I want to invite us to do is move out of the fight, flight, freeze, fawn system. So we move out of that threatened system, think, oh, I feel fear or I feel anger about what they did. I note that. And instead, now I'm curious, what's going on for that person? Why did they not notice me? What's going on for them? What's happening in their world that's led to them not noticing me? And a lot of that is letting go of, it's not about me. Typically, other people's behavior has nothing to do with you, and it's all to do with them. And once we understand that and we can let go, we can rewire the computer, and we can go from that initial emotive response to curiosity instead of our stored response of flipping them the bird. And that's basically how we change behavior, is we're rewiring that computer by slowing down and moving into conscious choice. And it's not easy, and it takes time to learn. And like any new skill you learn, you go through this process, and we go through a process of learning a skill. The first part of learning a new skill is unconsciously incompetent. We don't know how to do it, and we don't understand how to do it, and we don't even know we're doing it wrong. Then we move to the bit that we stay the longest in when we're learning something new, which is consciously incompetent, and it's the most painful part of learning. So you know you're not doing it right, and you can't do it. And that's the point where you get really frustrated when you're learning a new skill. Say you're learning tennis and you keep hitting the ball like out of the court, or too hard or into the net, and you get frustrated with yourself. And we have to stay in that for a bit.
That is my one feeling. I'm constantly feeling consciously incompetent. That's it. That's the feeling.
I just want to.
Hopefully, I can help you get to the next
It's
part.
very painful. It is. I totally identify with that.
Anthony, I just sent you a text. We need to talk.
Sorry, Lee. Keep going. This is all good.
If you want to wind people up, that's a great one to send them. Just, we need to talk. And if you really want to get to them, just add a few dots after it. Like, we need to talk. Dot.
I think it's great. All right, so Lee, I think it's great. I think that there's you have hit on multiple
so many things.
Mindfulness. You've talked about 2,000 years of spiritual practice, and you've talked about like the latest areas of neuropsychology. So there's a lot of stuff in that. Mm-hmm. But let's try to even dumb it down one step more, which is I'm a new founder. I need to start trying to develop my emotional intelligence skills. We know that we need to work on them. Yes, I think it's good to start to try to realize that it's not all about you, which is hard. What are some ways that I can do that? What are some practical things that I can do to start to try to develop those skills?
So when you mentioned their mindfulness, I love meditation for people. And the reason is because it teaches us to have that emotional experience, quieten our mind down. So if we're talking about the learning process, that consciously incompetent part, when we meditate, it allows us to recognize we're there and then make conscious choice. So this is the thing, a model that I really like is called Above and Below the Line. It's by the Conscious Leadership Group, a coach called Jim Dethmer. And the below the line is that emotive part I was talking about, which we all have. So the first thing you have to recognize is it's not bad. You will have an emotional response. We all have emotions. That's how our brain is designed to work. That's how our bodies are designed to work. Be okay with that. Don't think you should be emotionless. You should be emotion. You should have emotions. And typically emotions pass in 60 to 90 seconds if we just let them be, let them feel them, and don't judge them. So the other thing is people judge themselves for being angry or afraid or sad, especially men, because young boys are told, don't be afraid, don't be angry. And that then becomes a shaming thing instead of it's a tool, it's data. I run men's groups. The first thing I teach the men in the men's groups is feelings are okay. There's no negative or positive feeling. It's just an experience. It tells you about your world. So we have to understand that, have that. So I think mindfulness is really great. And then the next thing is just curiosity. Be curious. Be curious about yourself, your experience. Be curious about others. Ask questions first. There's that old adage, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And it's because human beings need to be in connection with each other. So that comes back to, you cannot do it by yourself as a founder. You need to be in connection with others, both for our own well-being. Like, we are designed to be in connection. Suicide rates in middle-aged men are skyrocketing right now because their marriage ends and they don't have friends. Human beings absolutely need to be in connection. It's one of the reasons I run men's groups. And what else I think is going to be useful right now? Just remembering that it's not your job to be perfect. There's a huge pressure for founders and leaders to think you have to have all of the answers. I experienced this as a cycling coach, and it was one of the biggest learning pieces for me, is I thought as the coach, I had to have all the knowledge, all the answers. We live in a world now where that's impossible. Anybody can pick their phone up and get an answer to a question. So often you might be wrong. You might misremember something or not know it. The trick there is to say, I don't know, let's explore it together. That creates trust. When you give an answer that's incorrect, or you kind of, make something up because you think you have to have the answer, then you actually create disconnect and distrust. So being able to say, I don't know, let's discover it, or why don't you go, I discover it, and bring it back to me, we'll learn together. Incredibly powerful.
I think that one of those techniques, I think, is a really easy one for founders to learn. And Anthony, I wanted to just reflect this to you, which is, when somebody comes to you with a problem, just train yourself to ask 4 or 5 questions first before you weigh in. Is that something that you've worked on? I know you're terrific.
Tell me more about that, Chris. Can you dive a little bit deeper?
Well done.
I'm learning modeling.
That is pretty terrific. I mean, just that act of starting to, even in the moment and in stress, if you could just train yourself to ask a couple of questions, I think could be really powerful. Do you agree, Lee?
Yeah, and going back to this emotional regulation, if you can understand that you are feeling fear, the fear of not being smart enough, the fear of not having the answers, and just acknowledge it and go, I understand why I'm feeling that. It's not right. I don't have to have all the answers. Then you can pause, and then you can be curious, and then you can ask those questions. Or you can say, I don't know. Let's talk about this. Let's explore this together. So that's why, for me, having that understanding of what do I feel now, what is it telling me, and then how can I move past it and let go of it and come into conscious cognitive thought, is the absolute key to being really effective. Once you get that mastered, the world is your oyster.
I want to ask one more question and then go into the speed round, Lee, which is, there's a really powerful technique, and it showed up in both psychology and mindfulness practices, which is called labeling.
Yeah.
Which is when you're starting to feel that thing, just put a name on it. Be like, hey, and being curious, not just for other people, but being curious for your experience as well. Do you have any experience with that, and any thoughts?
Yeah, so we often call it noting. It's called noting in meditation. You just note the feeling that you're having and then let go of it. And what you're trying to do is observe it. So you're actually observing your own feeling. When I work with founders and in men's groups, I get them to download an app called Mind Jogger. And it's just a random app that will pop up, and you can put a prompt into it. And the prompt is 4 deep box breaths. So breathe in for 4, hold your breath for 4, breathe out for 4, hold your breath for 4. Do that 4 times and go, what am I feeling? And it blows people's minds that they do that, they slow down, and suddenly they're having all these feelings that they've been ignoring. They're like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? Oh, yeah, because I'm out of connection with somebody. Oh, God, I need to get back into connection with them. It's all there, kind of floating under the surface, and we've been taught to ignore it. Because as little kids, we're told, don't have feelings. Feelings are bad. Right? Feelings are absolutely part of our human experience, and successful people know that, note them, as you said, label the feeling. What is it I'm feeling? Then what does that feeling tell me? So the labeling part is the first part of the journey, just noting the feeling. Then the next part is, okay, now what does that feeling tell me? What's the data that is providing me about my human experience? And once we get that, there's this richness that's added to our lives, because this information is there everywhere. Our body, our mind is telling us all of this information about our experience that typically we just ignore. And that allows us to be in better connection with ourselves and much better connection with other human beings. And as you kept saying, Chris, this is all observable psychology. You know, I'm not woo. I don't have a ponytail. I'm a 6'2", 200-pound ex-athlete that did power sports and likes boxing and hitting things. I'm not woo. This isn't like necessarily spiritual or religious, or that some people can connect it to that. This is just pure neuroscience. We can observe everything that I'm talking about so far.
Yeah, I teach box breathing as the tools that the Navy SEALs teach to pull themselves out of that, fog of war. Everything's crazy. It's like, yeah, they use box breathing. It's the same thing. All right. Great conversation, Lee. Are you ready for the speed? Anthony,
You have one job, and you mess it up. You mess it up every time.
Every time, Anthony. Every time. Double click it. I just.
Could that music have been more melodramatic?
Yes, it could. It could have been.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe so. All right, Lee. Direct confrontation or diplomatic navigation, which gets faster results when addressing performance issues?
Oh, the second, almost always. Very rarely do you actually need to be very direct. And skilled leaders know when to. Poor performance is not something you need to be direct for, but somebody breaking a rule, you might need to be direct. Otherwise,
higher for EQ potential or technical skills?
Depends on the position.
Good point. Transparent vulnerability or confident certainty?
Transparent vulnerability creates so much more trust.
Individual coaching or group dynamics, which transforms company culture faster?
Both. People have to have a skill set necessary to be able to participate in the group coaching, and typically you do that one-to-one first.
Immediate feedback or process reflection, which creates lasting behavioral change?
The second one. People have to be in the right place to receive feedback.
Unbelievably good conversation. Anthony, what did you learn? What did your one feeling take away from this?
Yeah. First of all, I will note that Chris is in a hurry to get off because he has another thing to go. So I'm going to take my time and go through the founder fundamentals. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I have the EQ to understand what's going on with Chris, and I am purposefully ignoring it.
Yeah, you still don't care. Right.
All right. Here's what I got.
You noted that.
The interesting thing that I pulled out of this is EQ really isn't about other people. It's about yourself. It's not a way to use and control other people. It's about essentially manipulating yourself to be more effective. That quote, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective, really kind of hit me. The other things, be conscious about what you're feeling: fear, joy, anger, sadness, interest, and disgust. Be conscious about not immediately reacting with fear, fight, flight, freeze, or form. And then choose the cognitive part of your brain. Turn to curiosity. In essence, take a breath, feel, and then look beyond the emotion. The fundamental idea, it's almost never about me. And just say that. I say that all the time to myself. It's not about me. It's about my wife. It's not about me.
If anybody wants to take something away from this conversation, just stopping yourself and going, it's not about me. Or another one I really like is everybody's doing the best they can with what they've got. That's great. People are deliberately doing things to us, right? That person deliberately cut us up. That person deliberately didn't answer our email or answered it incorrectly. And really, it's just people are doing the best they can with what they've got. And sometimes their toolbox might be lacking and they need a bigger toolbox.
Deep dive recommendations: Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradbury, Nonviolent Communications by Marshall Rosenberg, very good book. Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, very, very good book. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. podcast, The Psychology of Entrepreneurship, The Knowledge Project, with Shane Parrish and Lee. I don't know if you ever watched a talk given by the late great David Foster Wallace, who wrote Infinite Jest. It's called How's the Water, and it just talks a lot about that idea about what is going on around you and being able to notice it's not always about you, that there's other people's experiences. Really awesome conversation, Lee. I feel like we could go on for 2 or 3 hours, but where can we find out more information about you? Where can we connect? And where can our founders join your cool Founder Catalyst group?
Thanks, Chris. I keep it very simple, as I said right at the beginning of this. So Lee Povey will find me anywhere. That's LEEPOVEY. That's my website, it's leepovey.com. I'm Lee Povey on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I predominantly post on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter. Go to my website, sign up for the newsletter. I send out helpful newsletters every week with a different kind of tip or technique on how to be more effective. That's my favorite word, effective. I want everybody to walk through the world feeling like they're more effective, than they're more in control, rather than they're at the effect of the world. They're in control of their own experience. And yeah, join us on the Founders Catalyst. It's a LinkedIn group. Just Google the Founders Catalyst. You'll get us on LinkedIn. And it's a place for founders to come, spend time together, hang out. We have a podcast where we discuss issues that founders face. Myself and another British coach who also has a sporting background. So surprised that we found each other over here. And we just talk about the struggles that we've had as humans and founders, and the things that we've done to overcome them. And the reason that we're in this coaching role is because I didn't have the support I needed when I was younger and when I was a young founder. And I think it's incredibly important to give back to people. I've been lucky to have a life where I've found 4 different companies, sold 3 of them, and I want to be part of helping other people.
Great conversation. Anthony, I'm sorry if you're one feeling, got a little bruised and battered today.
Anthony, which one? Of fear, joy, anger, sadness, interest, and disgust. Which is your feeling?
Yeah, I think
no. My prominent feeling is confusion.
Okay.
We can get smarter, Anthony. That's what I learned today.
And do you have anger about that confusion, or do you have fear about that confusion?
I'm quite joyful in my ignorance. Yes.
There's a great song by TV on the radio called Happy Idiot. It's terrific. All right, Anthony, what do we have coming up next?
So we're going to be talking about how to be a mentor and why it's important for other founders to help other founders. Looking forward to that. Everybody, thank you. Lee, first of all, thank you very much. Great conversation. I really did learn a ton today. And for all of you listening, be sure to follow Lee on LinkedIn. Also follow us on howtofounder.com, where you can subscribe to us on YouTube, and also get our episode blog. Until next time, we will see you. Thanks again. Bye.